Yeah, we can just come in so everyone else can make their way in. Cool, cool. So, yeah, maybe let's come in and then like shut the door at least, I don't think it was actually supposed to be open. Yeah, so we're in Alana's like awesome like makeshift grow space. So, you know, when I first started cultivating, I really had a misconception on, oh, I need all this gear, it needs to be super pro, I need to spend a ton of money, and it's not the case. And how many of you took Willie's class this morning? Okay, so he probably like taught you that you don't need a lot to like make something happen, and we can see it right here. Like Alana created a really good example on like, we have, you know, just a clean floor, some plastic rooms, and she's been successfully able to cultivate mushrooms. Maybe not like laboratory grade grain spawn that she can commercially sell, but like enough where she can grow some oysters and some shiitakes and stropharia and things like that. Potentially like more vigorous types of fungi that maybe there is a speck of contaminant, but it doesn't matter, that mycelium takes it over and it's able to fruit and everyone's happy because we get mushrooms. So basically I feel like the best way to potentially make a lab is like a room within a room within a room if possible, and that really helps with the, like the aseptic like concepts. So like someone doesn't like open the door like, hey, so-and-so's at the door, and like a gust of air comes in and like all that air like goes into the bag that you just use to sterilize, you know. So I like to have like that concept of like the room within the room or something like that, where we're keeping it, the airflow sterile. And HEPA filters are like the next step, right? We want to get the HEPA filter to be in the room to like move the air around and like clean it. So we can have like even, so Will Padilla, who's going to be teaching the cordyceps cultivation course today, he doesn't even have like a room within a room. He's just like, it's basically in his bedroom, and he has a HEPA filter that's pretty much just recycling the air in the room. He like runs it for a while, and then he's able to do it because he's working right in front of the HEPA filter, okay? So he's like, everything is downstream, right? And the cleanest part of your lab should be like pretty much like in front of the HEPA filter. And I've been in a lot of labs with a lot of different like people, and like some people like don't use gloves. Some people like are just rubbing alcohol over their hands like all the time, and they're not using gloves, and they're, you know, they're inoculating, and that works for them. I personally think gloves are awesome, so you don't have to pour rubbing alcohol over your hands, because that stings, especially if you have cuts and stuff like that, and it just like dries your hands out. It's not the best. But gloves are like a really good step to like getting that aseptic technique and a wipeable surface. I was lucky enough that my family had old restaurant gear, so a lot of stainless countertops were available at my disposal, and that obviously was a bonus, but you don't have to like purchase a bunch of stainless steel brand new. You might even be able to find like a restaurant supply store that has used gear that you can get a nice lab bench. Or even like old you know, schools, when they update their labs, they sell the old like lab benches and things like that, or get rid of them. And Craigslist is your best friend sometimes when you're like making a lab, or when you're trying to like get the right gear to like have an aseptic lab. So you know, gloves, a nice clean surface, stainless, or even like that like thick plastic that like you can spray down and wipe down, and it's like a clean surface. For mica, even pretty much anything that's like not porous, okay? And you have that, and you like spray it down, and your hands are sprayed down, and you're running the HEPA filter, and it's cleaning the air out, and no one opens the door. Some people wear a mask even, you know, because they don't want to just like cough, or they're sick or whatever. I typically don't unless I am sick. but I personally don't wear a mask. I usually just try to like not be like into the bag, which doesn't really happen unless I don't know, never happens, but you know. And also like no talking, you know, like because that's also making contamination like possible. So like usually, unless we have like a faulty sterilizer, usually we're the #1 vector for contamination. You know, like either just like from poor like skills when we are inoculating, or just like we didn't realize that we're reaching over the bag to like grab a tool and like the airflow is like pushing the dirt from you like into the bag or like into the, you know, the grain spawner or the jar. It doesn't have to be a bag, but like into the jar. So we want to make sure that we're on our game, basically. And I'm pretty, you know, retentive like in my lab, and sometimes I would like check in and like my buddy's like pouring, he's pouring like a whole row of spawn, you know, into sawdust bags, but he's like, you know, his arms like over the other bags as he's doing that. Like that's not good technique. We want to make sure that we're like placing our entire body like downstream, whether, and even in the sense of like petri dishes, we want to make sure like our hands and everything is like downstream in that sense. So, and make sure that if we aren't going to use gloves, that we're sterilized to the elbow then, you know, especially if we're, you know, straw and pasteurization don't need to be as sterile, but I think it's worth it, you know, to be a little bit extra more cautious and things like that, because you have better success and then you have more mushrooms and everyone wins essentially. Any question? Yeah.
What can I downstream?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
we'll talk about it. We'll like peek into the room, but like, actually let's like look at this like glove box real quick, because I just kind of like, we're gonna go in like, because it's a bigger group, we're gonna go in teams into the lab and just like peek in, but like when we're talking about upstream, downstream, right, like hypothetically, this is like where your HEPA filter is gonna be in the room, like upstream from you.
In the back.
In the back, and here's your lab bench. Obviously it's a glove box, but let's use our imagination a little bit. And here's the HEPA filter, and it's blowing air towards us. So the first mushroom farm I worked at, actually, and they changed their practices since then, but they had like an old school, like, you know, for like chemistry lab and stuff like that, where like the air, they had like, what are they called, like, the hood, right? They had like the flow hood that was like pulling the air up. And they had like so much contamination, like 40% of their bags like got sick. And that's a lot. I mean, especially if you're using those bags, like the sterilizable bags, those aren't cheap. Those aren't cheap. They're like 40 cents a pop, and they don't sell them in like 20 packs. They sell them in 1,000 packs. So like, it's a lot of cash money. And if you're like throwing out almost half of them every time, you're wasting money. So hypothetically, we have our HEPA filter, right? It goes right down to the bench that we're using. We want to wipe our bench down. The air is pushing towards us. We are downstream.
Okay.
Here's upstream. Okay, and anything between us and there is like, should be clean. So like if we're pouring petri dishes or making bags or jars, we want to make sure that like our hands aren't over or in front or anything that's like us or dirty in front or over these like inoculation areas. So a bag, a jar, a petri dish, essentially. Questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are there any other non-porous materials besides like glass and vinyl?
I mean, it's a surface that you want to be able to like wipe down like multiple times, you know, like within that. So like, yeah, like, you know, we were talking about stainless steel, like for mica, you know, like you can get like old like kitchen counters like at like salvages, you know. Kitchen counters are pretty non-porous essentially. I don't know, does anyone have any feedback on non-porous
You
material?
said plastic, right?
Yeah, just like plastic,
You could-
essentially.
You
but
could
just
cover
like
a piece
thicker.
of, yeah, you can get thick stuff at like Home Depot.
Yeah, exactly. So like,
You can use a plastic sheet too, over porous surface.
yeah, like you could like get that and like staple it really tight, like over like a crappy table like this if you wanted to. You know, like this is definitely a porous surface, and we don't want to like
Yeah.
make a lab over it, right? So, but like you could use that. It could be like super minimalistic. It doesn't have to be, you know, like I said, like Craigslist is your best friend. Use your imagination. There's a lot of material out there. Any other questions while we're okay? So. Yeah, so the HEPA filter, you know, nice to have like not like an open room. We want to make sure like maybe like we're keeping that door closed. There's like this like pressure that like that air is like pushing towards us, and we want to make sure that we're not, you know, like pouring a plate with our hand like this and opening it like that, because like that air, just that millisecond, like could contaminate, right? Bacteria and virus, it's like exponential. All it takes is one microorganism to then contaminate, because then there becomes 2, and then 4, and then, you know, 16, and all that. And it's just like, then we have contamination. So,
Wait, so how are you supposed to do it? You said you're not supposed to.
yeah, so we're gonna like hold it like this, so like downstream. So like instead of like so we're not gonna like hold anything. We're not gonna grab anything like that. We're not gonna like reach over any like a bag or a jar. We're gonna like make
Oh, I
sure we're like this, or grabbing from the base if
Okay.
it's like a bag or a jar. So we're not like grabbing from the top.
Oh, okay.
Like a tool that I like to use is hydrogen peroxide. So not necessarily like the first aid stuff that you get from the store, but the food grade hydrogen peroxide that's like higher percentage. So that's what we're like sterilizing the dishwater with. That like, so it's not bleach, it's a 35% hydrogen peroxide, which is very corrosive, but you dilute it. So like if it's a 33%, 35%, it's like 1 to 10. You know, so 1 part water, or 1 part hydrogen peroxide, 10 parts water, and you dilute it. And that is actually one of like my saviors, I think, that like, because essentially we're not like trying to like spray the rubbing alcohol or the isopropyl alcohol like around the rim or around the bag or anything like that. We want to potentially use something that's only just going to neutralize, because that's pretty much like what hydrogen peroxide does. It kind of like neutralizes the microbes and just makes them inert. They might like still be there, but they're just not going to multiply as quick if at all. So like, say we got our lab bench and we opened up a bunch of jars. We open the jar, we place the lid on the side, open the jar, place the lid on the side. Take our hydrogen peroxide that's already been diluted, spray it on the rim. So like we're gonna like hypothetically say that this is the lid, okay, and we're gonna go and it's just gonna like, it's just for the surface, and then we're gonna spray the lid too. That's what I do. Spray the lid, etc., etc. Then we get our spawn jar that's already like colonized, and we're gonna take that and we're gonna inoculate these jars or these bags. And so we'll open it in front of the HEPA filter. Quick unscrew, you know, upstream, you know, open it and like basically put it down like this and use that and pour it like this instead of like that, right? We don't want to like stretch over it or anything like that, and it's got to be already broken up so it pours out easily. And I like to, if it's like a big jar, a big bag, and you're like doing hundreds of inoculations in each unit, even spraying a little hydrogen peroxide in that spawn jar on the rim, because you know your hand might slip, or just in general there could be one little microbe on that rim that you're pouring that spawn out into your other jar. So like spraying a little bit on there, and then if you're gonna like twist it back on and like save it for later, sometimes it can, that's the thing, spraying that lid again. Or if we had our bags, how many know what I mean when I mean bags? most of us, right? And if we can peek in that room in there, there's dozens of bags. And actually, let me grab one. Boom, boom. Okay. So we got these bags that, right, we sterilized some sawdust in them, took it out of the autoclave or the pressure cooker or whatever, or super pasteurizer, whatever we're using. And it's all sawdust, and we put like 6 in front of the HEPA filter, and we have like another bag that's just like grain spawn, and we open them up, and I spray a little hydrogen peroxide before I inoculate, open up my spawn bag. I like going like this with my spawn bag to make this part like a spout.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we skip the step. Before we do that, I like to break up the spawn so it falls earlier or easier, and then make that spout, and then we'll pour into all these sterilized bags. And we're basically not like this or whatever or anything like that. And then we'll take these, and obviously we see that there's a seal. I like to have my impulse sealer still in front of my HEPA filter. Wipe that puppy down with a lot of rubbing alcohol. We're wiping every surface with rubbing alcohol, in my opinion. That's just me, okay? Wipe that impulse sealer down, rubbing alcohol, everything. Because sometimes, you know, a lot of times that sawdust might not want to just roll right out of the bag. It might just fall out of there real quick. And it takes some practice to, like, get the flow and feel it out. And even with some practice, sometimes it just doesn't want to fall out of there as easy. And it makes a mess sometimes. And you'll get sawdust pieces. And, you know, it's not a contaminant because it's your spawn or whatever, but it's a contaminant if we're not trying to grow oyster mushrooms that time and we're trying to grow reishi or a chicken mushroom or something. So not every contaminant is a mold. It could be something else that you're already growing. And reishi was a contaminant in my lab at one point where it was just like, we thought we were growing chicken mushroom. We thought we were growing something else. And like every time we're like, are we serious? This is like more reishi?
Sure,
What?
reishi invasion.
Reishi invasion, like legit, you know, like, which is okay. It's not like a bad thing, but I mean, restaurants don't necessarily want reishi. So we were a little short on some lion's mane that time around. Questions?
Okay. If you
Go for it.
if you have a glove box like that and don't have a HEPA filter or a flow hood, would spraying like misting the air actually kill most of the microbes, or does that not really work?
I think it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it works. Yeah. I mean, I'm not versed in glove box like technique as much as I want to be. Erica, the other organizer, who is like a medic, she's worked with glove boxes down in like the Amazon for the Myco Renewal project down there, and they use glove boxes, and I know a bunch of people that use glove boxes pretty successfully. It's just when life gives you an autoclave, sometimes glove boxes aren't a thing. So, you had a question? Or someone have a question?
Yeah, so you use rubbing alcohol on things that won't ever come in contact. Is that the difference?
Yeah, or just like surface. Surface, like materials. Even like sometimes like the HEPA filters, they'll have like lips. Like the filter stops and then like there's some metal, like that little lip right there. Take like, you know, some rubbing alcohol with like a paper towel and rub that, you know, because like.
But as opposed to like the peroxide.
As opposed to, so like, you know, we cut this open and use this as spawn hypothetically. I'm going to spray that spout with hydrogen peroxide and not rubbing alcohol.
Okay.
Yeah, because it will kill it. I mean, it's not like, you know, I'm sure we've like done that in the lab by accident, like, oh shit, like we did that by accident. It's not like the whole batch was ruined, but ideally hydrogen peroxide is the way to go.
As opposed to impulse sealer, what do you think about using metal ties? Because my glove box isn't that big, and I can't use an impulse sealer inside the glove box.
Yeah. Alana does that.
Oh,
Yeah, or like she does like zip
I see
ties
that.
and stuff like that.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
Alana does that.
Sure.
I think it's useful. I think like if you're, I'm not entirely sure because I personally like haven't had to do that. But I wonder if it's like only good for like more vigorous strains. Can anyone else speak to
What-
that?
First of all, what's an impulse sealer?
It's like, it makes this like stick together.
Okay.
Right, because this was a bag, and then it's like almost like the food savers.
Oh, okay.
It's a food
Okay.
saver that you don't vacuum seal,
Oh, okay.
essentially. And I
Okay.
used a food saver for like 2 years before we actually got an impulse sealer.
Oh.
That like instead of like pressing vacuum, you do manual seal, and it'll seal that up.
Oh, okay. And you said,
I use metal ties. I just bunch up the end and tie it off
okay.
instead of sealing it.
Yeah. Yeah, just like anything. And, you know, some people, when they have that, they'll like stick polyfill in there as well, like just to make sure it, like, if there is any air going through, it'll get filtered. And polyfill is like a really cheap filter. So instead of buying those discs that, you know, Myco supplies sell for sterilizing, or like for the filter in sterilized jars, right? Because this is a filter right here on this bag, so the mycelium can breathe,
Right, okay.
but no microbes can get in. Well, and for cultivating in jars, they sell these like specialized discs that are like supposed to like be really awesome. In my experience, they suck, but some people have better success. But you know, it's like 1,000,000 times cheaper is a big pillow of polyfill, which is literally pillow stuffing. And that stuff is amazing. It is amazing. I can't even believe it works. I love that it works, but it works. And you know, Peter has that technique where it's like with the polyfill for it to breathe, and then like also like the inoculation port where you like puts a little silicone on the rim, and that's like where your injector site for liquid culture. And like you'll see my grain, or not my grain spawn, my plug spawn that I'm getting rid of this weekend. You know, I don't use bags for my plug spawn because it's like, how many more bags can I use in my life? I'm just like gonna use glass jars to store my plug spawn, and that's what we do. We just take the lid and like put a hole in it, and then like thread some polyfill through it, and then close it up, and it's able to breathe and live without being contaminated if it's like sterile and done well. How many of you have used polyfill? It's amazing, right? Are we like in love with it, right? It's awesome. And it's so cheap. Like you can get like literally like a 3-pound box at like Michael's or something for like $9 or something. Versus like those discs that they sell that are specialized are like $1 a piece.
Yep.
Or somewhere close to it.
May I speak to this, please?
Yeah.
Also, another thing that you might want to consider for a gas exchange filter is Tyvek, and it's free in the mailbox. So it's even
Yeah.
one more level down
Yeah.
in cost. I use a lot of Tyvek filters on the top of my jars.
Great. Great.
Just silicone on there. When you're making the ports, you already have the silicone out.
What's Tyvek?
Tyvek is the envelopes, those like fabric-y kind of envelopes, mailers.
Oh, okay, the things, okay. It
They're
looks a
not
little,
rigid envelopes. They're
Right.
just like they're.
they look a little plasticky on the
Yeah,
outside.
what percentage
Okay.
hydrogen peroxide do you use?
So I get bulk 30, it's like 33 or 35%, I can't remember. The bottle, the big jug is actually here. We brought it for the kitchen, and it's by the dishwashing station if you want to look at it. It says corrosive right on it, because yeah, it will burn your skin. And you won't be like, oh my god, like ah, but you'll be like, oh, something spilled on me, and then like 30 seconds later, you're like, what is happening?
Oh,
and it like
gross.
turns white, and it stings, and it's not fun. And then you'll like rinse it, and it's not like going anywhere, but you'll survive, and it'll be okay. I'm sure if it was like higher percentage, it'd be really bad. But
Where
like,
do you get it?
online,
Oh, okay.
online. But like if you're looking for like smaller amounts, like health food stores sell food grade hydrogen peroxide. That's like usually 11%, and that is pretty diluted enough that you don't need to do like the 1 to 10. You can just do like 1 to 4.
Okay,
Essentially,
okay.
or yeah, I don't know, just like less dilution. My math skills.
Which percentage would you use for spraying the open jar?
I would do like a, you know, an 8 to 11%,
Okay.
essentially. Like, so if we're doing a 33%, then dilute that 1 to 10. And then if you're like getting the stuff that's like sold at the stores, just dilute that like actually like 1 to 2, honestly, for the like 11%. And then that can say, I like keep in like when we're not using it, because it'll bubble, it'll get fizzy, and then like, you know, you'll go in the lab like 3 days later and there'll be a pool of hydrogen peroxide on your table because it like literally comes up through the spray bottle or something like that. So like when I'm done with lab, I'll like unscrew it a little bit so like that air doesn't like expand and then like push out from the spray bottle. But I feel like hydrogen peroxide is like really essential. It's like, well, I was doing lab for a while and it's like, you know, having like good luck but still not like being at where I want to be with my like success rate. And then like my buddy was like, oh, you know, I went to his lab when we were doing work and he's like, here's this. And I'm like, what? So I was really grateful for that, and it's definitely changed the game for me. And it also helps when like we're doing like even non-super sterile stuff, like even when we're packing straw or pasteurized straw, it can like, you know, when we're packing a big bag that we pasteurize some straw and like we're spraying that we're sprinkling spawn, like, you know, in layers into that straw bag. I still like spraying, oh, where's that bag? I still like spraying, you know, the lip and the spout of the spawn bag or the lip of the jar, even if we're not like, even in open air cultivation. It's just like one thing you do to like maybe make it a little bit more successful. And whether is it worth it or not, I'm not very quantitative. So I don't take notes really, or like, oh, I did this 10 times and this is the result. I should, but I don't. So that's a fault that I have. But yeah, I would like, even like an open air cultivation where we're like inoculating straw, like, you know, spray that with hydrogen peroxide in the spout. And then even like when, after a couple, you know, layers that you put in there, spray that entry to that straw bag that you're inoculating. You know, because it's just, why not? Why not? Question?
Just a comment. I had a buddy who was doing the hydrogen peroxide and got really good results from doing that versus when he wasn't doing that. I don't know.
Like straw and like open air stuff?
Yeah, all the open air cultivation.
Yeah. It's awesome, and it's not that expensive, and it goes a long way. So I think that's cool, and thanks for saying that.
You can get hydrogen peroxide and 35% at hydroponic supply stores.
Great,
area.
great, awesome, awesome. Haven't been there in a few years, but I'm glad you said that. The transition. Even though I encourage it all day. Yeah, so